Welcome to Audiobook Connection, the weekly podcast that pulls back the curtain on the audiobook world. I'm your host, Becky Parker-Geist, and we're here to help authors, narrators, and listeners connect more deeply with the stories they love. Let's dive in. Hi, I'm Becky Parker-Geist. I'm the host of the Audiobook Connection podcast, Behind the Scenes with the Creative Teams. I'm also president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association and the CEO and founder of Pro Audio Voices and Amplify Audiobooks, providing audiobook and podcast production, distribution, and marketing. And today, I get to talk with Bobby Kelly. He is the author of The Next Chapter Starts Now. Bobby's a personal systems strategist and owner of Results Only Fitness, who helps people who look successful on the outside but feel stuck in action, building practical systems that turn clarity into consistent follow-through. Bobby, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Becky. It's a pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about how you got started on your journey in publishing.
So publishing, this is my third book. The first two books I really kept for my clients in-house. They were either, rather lengthy exercise guides and nutrition guides to help my clients kind of get through their processes on a day-to-day basis. This one was a little bit different. I have been in the fitness industry for 35 years. And in those 35 years, I've always, in the past couple of years, had an opportunity to coach gym owners on how to keep their clients longer, work on their systems, get better trainers. And I've spoken for a great many years to the fitness gym owner audience. But one day I was working with a group of, let's just say there were 25 gym owners at this small conference. And I was approached by a woman who said, Bobby, it is time for you to stop just working with just fitness people. My message, the way I come across on stage, the humor I use, the anecdotes I use. She said, you have got to write a book. And I was like, well, I've written a book, that's no big deal to me. And she goes, no, I mean one for the masses, one that's not just exercises. You have tools that people could learn from. So that was July 4th of 2025. So just little over a year ago is when I first started writing the book. And I'm more than happy to share how I wrote the book because that's a unique story, but maybe we can do that later.
I think we'll get into that. But just for listeners who are meeting you for the first time, maybe describe a little bit about what you do aside from presenting to fitness trainers.
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, I've been a gym owner for 35 years. I have a very successful gym, first in DC, now in Phoenix, Arizona. And I realized after the COVID pandemic that I needed to reach more than the 225 people I see, every week at the gym. And if you don't want to own one of these giant 20 million square foot gyms, I don't. I have a very small boutique facility. Your reach can only go so far. Right. And while I have clients who have been with me 12, 13, 14, 15 years, which is very unique in our industry, to expand out of that really needed to happen. And it needed to happen basically through a book because it just kind of ends up being a very good calling card. So all of a sudden, the lawyers at the gym wanted me to come work with their staff. Or I have a couple of Fortune 500 executives who said, hey, I really want you to come talk to my team. So that was the main reason for doing that, because changing somebody's body when they want to get into shape, I could do that in my sleep. But what most people don't realize is to get somebody to get in better shape, to lose fat, to gain muscle, to change their mindset really requires a different level of clarity so you can get a different level of execution. So 9 times out of 10, I had to do so much mindset work before I could do the squats and the ab work and the bicep curls. I had to get their head and their mind in shape first.
Yeah. All right. So now coming back to that teaser that you gave us about how you wrote the book, fill us in. What was that like?
I am not one of those people. I don't call what I do life coaching. I call it execution coaching, or I'm an execution strategist, because I believe if you get that idea at 2 o'clock in the morning, you got to execute on it, because 9 times out of 10, that's a pretty darn good idea.
Uh-huh.
So I'll keep the story as short as I can. But my wife and I also run a nonprofit, and she happened to be going to South America to Machu Picchu. And this particular trip for our nonprofit, we usually go together, but this was an all women's trip. So I had to be left at home. And we don't usually do that. We usually do almost everything together, including owning a gym. So she left the day before July 4th. So she left on July 3rd. And this woman who came to me and said, "You really need to write a book," that had only happened maybe 60 days prior. So it was one of those things that was percolating in my head and percolating. And I was like, what am I going to write about? What do I do? Middle of the night, I wake up and all of a sudden I had 10 chapters in my head.
Hmm.
I just knew it. I was like, I know exactly what I want to do. I ran out of the bedroom, went to the computer. I typed up the 10 bullet points, and then I went back to bed.
Yeah.
When I woke up the next morning, it was July 4th weekend. And for a fitness guy, it means it's not a crazy week for me. I had a couple days that I was not going to have to see a million clients. We were closed for 2 days. So, and I also mentioned I'm in Phoenix.
Yeah.
I woke up and I literally took out my cell phone and I started pacing around the pool in my backyard, speaking the book into my phone notes. And I just kept going chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter. And then when I came in and downloaded everything, I literally read myself back my book, changed, some spelling errors and a
Right.
couple of other things and fixed a few things here and there. But I basically wrote my book in about 10 hours because I knew the book I wanted to write. I wanted it to sound like me. And because we're doing a book, a podcast on audiobooks, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that in a minute too. We'll
Yeah.
tease that out there. But when people read it, I wanted the people who knew me to hear my voice
Yeah.
and the people who didn't know me to feel like they were hearing my voice.
Yeah.
So when the words were coming up, so I didn't need it to sound like, War and Peace.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to sound
Yeah.
like a guy who you were having a conversation with,
Right.
who was getting into your head and really kind of taking you through, hey, this is how you can go from this to this
Yeah.
and how you can find that clarity and start to execute. So that's the reason why that story is kind of fun. Because most people say, oh my God, I've been writing my book for years and years and years. And then I tell them, yeah, I wrote my book in a day.
Yeah.
And they're like, how is that possible? And then I say, well, read it and you'll find out. And then they read it and they're like, I read it in a day because
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to be something that you start and you finish, not something you just enjoy.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And you reminded me now, as you described your process, that one of the nonfiction books I wrote about, it's an audiobook toolkit for authors, I used a very similar process. I had my phone and I looked at, okay, what is the topic I'm going to talk about? And I just talked through it because I
Yeah.
know it, and then it just comes out. So I think it's a cool process for those of us who are writing in the nonfiction realm.
It's
Yeah.
just, and it's not for every personality.
Right.
Some people need to, I don't want to say this crassly, they need to suffer over the words. They just have to like, oh, I could use a better adjective. That's not who I am. That's not how I coach in life.
Mhm.
That's not how I help people. I'm usually, I work with people for an hour. I got to get a lot done in an hour.
Right.
So I was like, I got to get a lot done in this hour, because if I don't get this done before I have to go to work on Monday after July 4th weekend, I might not get back to this for a while.
Right.
So I agree with you. I think if your process and your mind works that way, it can be a very satisfying and effective way to get your book done.
Right. And of course, some people are, just their process is the way that they think through. It helps them to be actually doing that physical writing, whether it's with a pen or pencil or computer, whatever. So I always
100%.
find that really interesting how we actually, what processes each of us use in overall. So coming back to like your book and the content of the book. So
Mhm.
it blends performance psychology, habits, and accountability, if I understand correctly, right?
Yes.
So how would you say that those three pieces work together to make for real change for somebody?
So Thank you. That's actually a very well thought out, great question, especially the way you put it. If someone comes to me, uh, and I write about my clients in the book. So each chapter starts off with what I call a next chapter champion. And it's someone who I've actually worked with and the process I used with that particular person, especially when it had there was an anecdote that I needed to get across to the reader at the end of the chapter. So one of the first people I write about is a client by the name of Riley. And when Riley came to me, I won't tell the whole story here, but Riley came to me before the show The Biggest Loser came out, and he was 683 pounds. You don't get to be 683 pounds if you don't have something going on upstairs.
Right.
It's just there's a lot. So I write about the story of how we helped him lose all of the weight, and I'm not going to tell you what I got him down to because maybe your listeners might actually go buy my book so they can hear the rest of that story. But we lost a significant. We lost three people's worth of weight, and as to get to the really succinct part of your question, I one of the things he had to promise me was every week he would not only see me a couple times a week, but at least once a week he would see a therapist, which he had not been seeing.
Mm.
And there needed to be work done there. And the therapist wanted to invite me into her process. And that was one of the first times I learned I've got a lot of work to do with his confidence. I have a lot of work to do with why does he go grab food instead of going for a walk? There was a lot of that process that went on there.
Mhm.
And that was, my first kind of inkling into this is more than just sets and reps and dumbbells and, showing up and getting sweaty.
Right.
This
Right.
is, hey, you're changing a life now and you're making somebody better from the inside out. And my whole thing is if you move better, you'll feel better. If you feel better, you'll live better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really believe that the mindset work has to be a huge part. And I think that's also why so many of my clients stay with me
Yeah.
because I don't ever let up on that.
Yeah.
There's always something new around the corner that you have to work on.
Yeah.
There's always
There's
another next chapter.
That's right. Yeah. And so are you now, is that kind of collaborative process with therapists or others? Is that something that you do on a typical basis?
Sometimes, there are people who just want to come and sweat. Those people, they're great. But I am known in the industry as like the person you send somebody to when you can't figure out what's going on here.
Mm.
And that's both on the maybe somebody's injured, maybe somebody has a bad shoulder or a bad hip, but it's also on the like, we need to create a process that makes them enjoy working out or makes them enjoy taking those next steps. So, when I'm working with somebody who doesn't really understand, hey, you're not, let's say I'm working with a bride and she wants to get into a dress.
Mm.
Well, that's lovely, but what's really underneath there? She wants to look her best on that day.
Hmm.
She wants to look pretty. But why? And really the bottom line is she just wants to be happy on her wedding day.
Yeah.
But I've got to let her realize, hey, that's why we're doing the work so you're happy,
Uh-huh.
not
Yeah.
because you want to look good in pictures.
Right. Right.
So I do have quite a few therapists around the Phoenix area who say, I need you to go see my friend Bobby. um, and so, but it's just part of like right now I have a staff of 4 and I'm teaching them like, hey, one of the things we say is we want to be the best part of your day.
Oh,
Well,
nice. Yeah.
that's an all-encompassing thing to ask of a trainer.
Hmm.
So I want them to be in a good mood. I want to talk about their kids. I want to talk about their grandkids. I want to talk about how's your job going. Sometimes it's good news. Sometimes somebody's going through some bad stuff. And you got to be prepared to deal with that and keep them working out to help the whole person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The whole person. That's what it was really coming through is that you work with the whole person, that whole integrated approach,
Mhm.
which is, I mean, that's life, right? That's reality versus trying to compartmentalize different parts of ourselves or just different aspects of ourselves, which I think seems very Newtonian. And not necessarily realistic.
I always say there's four parts to what I do, and people laugh at the one in the middle. I say, I'm part priest, I'm part trainer, I'm part hairdresser, and I'm part coach. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm not really buying the hairdresser part. I'm like, yeah, but if you have a good hairdresser, you tell them everything.
Right. Right. So, in your book, you talk about personal systems.
Mhm.
What does that actually mean in real life?
So it really depends. In the book, it's the very first thing I attack is there's a next chapter. People go through next chapters all the time. Right now, I have a bunch of college kids a bunch of high school kids going to college for the first time. For many of them, that's their first next chapter.
Mm.
They're leaving home, they're having to make new friends, they're having to learn how to be by themselves. Oftentimes, the next thing is that first job. Then the next chapter after that is maybe starting a family. And then there's lots of different chapters in your life. So the first thing I try and get people to do is to name the next chapter.
Hmm.
Um, One of the people I write about in the book lost a spouse. Well, that's another chapter.
Right.
Other people are changing jobs. And so next chapters are not always bad. Oftentimes they're actually very good for the person, but sometimes they can't recognize it.
Hmm.
So the systems are really first we have to recognize what it is that we want to change, and then it's how do we take those steps? And after 35 years of kind of, like I said, part hairdresser, part part priest, part therapist, part coach, part fitness trainer. It was very obvious to me what those steps were for the people. But if you are just listening to this on an audiobook, I'm putting my hand up in front of my face right now because it's usually so close you can't see it.
Right.
They can't see around it to what they have to do next.
Right.
And the words, I never thought of it that way, come out at my gym and in our coaching sessions all the time because, and sometimes they just smack themselves in the head and go, I can't, that's so easy. Why didn't I think of that?
Right. Right.
But sometimes it's not easy to you because you're so close or you're so
Right.
involved in it or you're so wrapped up. So the systems are going to be different for everybody. It's really more, what are the questions you can ask yourself so the steps become obvious?
Mm. Yeah. I think it's a bit like as like I work with a mentor, so it's similar kind of thing where when you're in the maze, let's say you're in the corn maze, right? To have somebody who is either up on the catwalk above or can look down, has
Mhm.
either been through the maze before themselves or, has that overall view. It's a metaphor, I think, that can help us understand why we just like can't see it.
Yeah. And I,
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great metaphor because, you can just picture, back in Roman times where they have these huge mazes and people are going through them and
Yeah.
there's just the audience watching, trying to see if they can get out. I've never thought of it that way, but I love that analogy. To me, it's the process of what do you want to change? How badly do you want it? And if you want it badly enough, the steps are actually easier than you think.
Mm, that's cool. So as you were walking around the pool,
Yeah.
dictating your book, was there anyone in particular or generally that you had in mind that you were writing the book or speaking the book to?
So, yeah, great question. Um, Two things jump out to answer that question as best as I can. I am not an avid reader of books like I like to read historical novels or things like that. I will read voraciously on fitness. I'll read voraciously on how to help people. I love topics, but I don't read for leisure, most likely. So my audience in my head was, I am so stuck right now. I if I pull this book off of the shelf, will I be better at the end of the first chapter?
Mm,
And then will I be better after the end of the second chapter? Like where they want to voraciously go, okay, it, it's a step by step process in my book. So there's places to write down. And I put spaces for notes. I wanted this to be earmarked, and I wanted there to be post-its, and I wanted pages to be folded. So I had that visual in my head.
Mm.
But when I made that initial bullet point, it was very obvious to me that I had a client from my past history right in front of me. And it was that client could have obviously had a name, but it could have been 30 people.
Right.
I used the story and I used it accurately, but I could have used 30 different people's story for this particular chapter, or a different set of 10 people for that particular chapter. So oftentimes it was, if someone was stuck with, I need to quit my job, or I need to leave this relationship, or I need to start playing the guitar. I've had these people in my life. I'm like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
And so that would be who like my audience was, is my in my head.
Yeah.
I wasn't one of those people who was thinking, oh, I'm Tony Robbins or Mel Robbins standing on stage in front of hundreds of thousands of people. That wasn't but I was literally in a room of people who were lost. They
Yeah.
were feeling there was an emptiness, or there was a lack of satisfaction. And whenever I do my speaking things, I can usually, it's almost like a spotlight goes on them. And I'm like, it's you. And then there's you. And then there's you. Um, and then I talk to them.
Yeah.
And when the heads start nodding, and and the smiles get bigger,
Yeah.
or maybe the tears come, you're like, okay, you're making a difference. And that's really all I wanted to do. I wanted to have, look, there's a million self-help books out there. There's a million fitness books out there. They all work, but do they resonate with you?
Right.
Maybe mine will, maybe mine won't. But I wanted to give the reader the best shot to go, you know what? If I just do what it says to do on this page and what he's telling me to do in the audiobook, I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. What you describe in terms of who you were thinking about
Hmm.
it ties in so closely to when I'm coaching an author in particular on when they're narrating their own audiobook. This is
Hmm.
exactly the advice that I'm saying. It's like, picture the person that it's someone, maybe maybe you're sitting across a table in a cafe and you have this, you're passionate about your topic, whatever it is that you're sharing, but who are you having this conversation with? So I love the way you describe that, because it feels very much in tune with the audiobook recording process, which we'll get to later.
Okay.
But before we get to that, I have a couple more questions I wanted to ask about. Like, could you share a moment in your own life where you had, where you were starting your own next chapter?
I'll start with the most obvious one. If you're watching the podcast, you will see that I have a little gray in my beard, so I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm in my mid 50s. And when I first started in the industry back in the early 90s, these were the days of Jane Fonda. These were the days of step aerobics. These were the days, weight training and the boutique gyms and things like that didn't exist. There were big Gold's gyms and there were big, spa type gyms, but there was not these boutique kind of personal training type things. So when I was leaving college, I had to have the conversation because I was all set to go to law school.
Oh,
And I
okay.
had to walk in the door and tell my parents I was going to wear leotards and jump around on a stage. And that was not a very easy conversation. You're going to do what? Now, luckily, I had paid my way through college, and so they weren't like, "I'm sorry, we just spent how much money to put you through college." I didn't have to have that conversation, um, but it it was I much like the book, and I tell people this all the time when I'm coaching them. If it's so vivid in your mind, it can be done. And I saw a warehouse that I would turn into a gym, and I saw the colors, and I saw the how I was going to set up the equipment, and how I wanted it to be different than everything else that was out there.
Mm,
So my next chapter was really like, I'm going to do something that it had started to be done, but there weren't a lot of us doing it.
yeah.
So people laugh. I am an OG in the fitness industry. There's not a lot of people who have been doing what I do for 35 years.
Yeah.
There's maybe 100, maybe a couple hundred of us, but there's not the thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of lawyers and accountants. Like, they've been doing those for centuries.
Yeah.
This is such an infant, fitness a career is still in the infancy stage.
Huh.
But it's so important.
Right.
So that was really like my very first next chapter. It was, how can I help people? I always do tease my sisters. Every single member of my generation and my family are teachers. So they're middle school teachers, they're administrators, they're high school teachers, and that goes to cousins and brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws. Like, we just have a whole bunch of teachers. I just tease them and say, I'm the only one who became a teacher and actually makes money. So, so for me, I was like, how can I help people and make money?
Yeah.
That was important.
That's great. Bobby, we're going to take just a short pause, and then we're going to come right back, and I have a bunch of questions for you about the audiobook.
Perfect.
We'll be right back. Okay, let's get real. Sadly, most authors struggle to reach their full audience and find it almost impossible to earn back their investment in audiobooks. Why? Because standard retailers pay such low royalties and give authors no control or marketing tools. But Amplify Audiobooks is changing the equation. You earn about triple the royalties compared to standard retailers, and that adds up fast. You have complete control over pricing, access to who your customers are so you can connect with them, mapped out and gamified marketing quests so you always know what's next on your marketing journey. And it's fun. A host of built-in marketing tools to help you reach more people, and a community that's excited to discover and support new voices. All so you can become the successful author you've always dreamed of. So stop whispering into the void and start building real momentum. Amplify Audiobooks, because books should bring us together in ways that help us all thrive. AmplifyAudiobooks.com. All right, so you talked about how you basically dictated your book as you wrote it. Now, as we step into the questions about the audiobook process, what was it like for you narrating your own story for the audiobook versus the process you used for writing the book?
So let me answer that. As you can probably tell, I like stories.
Yeah.
And I've already alluded to the fact that I'm not an avid reader.
Yeah.
But right around the time J.K. Rowling came out with the Harry Potter series, I had little boys, so I would read to them. And that was great because they really enjoyed like the voices and the things like that.
Yeah.
And anybody who knows audiobooks knows that famously Jim Dale was the narrator for the Harry Potter series, if you know anything about it.
Right.
And I can't remember if it's 33 or 55. I think he had to create 55 different voices for the characters.
Right.
And I was always like, well, how hard is that? And but very hard, by the way. But I then said to the boys, hey, we can read this, but there's this guy. Why don't we listen to it? And they got enraptured by it as well. So here I have, preteen or early teen young boys. We're listening to the books. And then I'm getting ahead because we found them not when they originally came out. We found them a little bit later. And so to me, the whole concept of an audiobook was, hey, people should hear you, because if you're passionate, it'll come through.
Mm-hmm.
If you're stern, it will come through.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I'm not sure I answered your question, so you might have to re-ask it a little bit, but the whole point of the audiobook was to mirror what I said earlier. I wanted people to read the page and picture my face and hear my voice. And then most people wait until they publish the book to do the audiobook. I did the audiobook as soon as as soon as the edits were done, I did it before we even had a book because I was like, I want people to have access to that.
Great. Yeah.
I did learn something. Maybe I'm jumping the gun on this. I did learn that, at least for me, Amazon wouldn't launch my audiobook until 30 days after I had published the book. I didn't know
Right.
that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I was really bummed out because I was getting so excited. I didn't know that was part of the process
Oh,
when you
you
work with
see,
them.
now if only we had known, because we can do audio first on Amplify
Oh,
audiobooks.
if we
Oh,
had only known each other.
if only then. All right. Well, that's okay. But that's
So
great
to
to know.
me, it's just there's for some people, I think more and more people being involved with the audio just is a for again for some people they absorb it better.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. I can hear. I don't love books that have been read by somebody other than the author. I don't mind them if it's a seasoned reader and somebody who really knows what they're doing. But in the early days of audiobooks, sometimes it was just somebody they didn't even know the topic, but they were good at voice.
Yeah. So I'm going to push back just a tiny bit on that.
Sure.
Only in that, no, I agree with you in terms of like somebody who is a mediocre reader.
Right.
That's never going to be the better choice. The only pushback I would say is a lot of, and I can tell that you were the appropriate choice for your audiobook, but there are more authors who are not good narrators because it's a
Yes.
whole different skill set
Agreed.
than that there are authors who are good narrators. Those are the rarer ones. So I feel like when an author is passionate about reading their own audiobook, that's a different, that is a key indicator as to whether they should or not. If they're like, I don't know, people tell me I should, probably shouldn't, you know?
I would I would change my answer with the one caveat. In my genre of a
Mm-hmm.
coaching,
Mm-hmm.
kind of self-care type thing.
And
You're
that,
right.
yeah.
I have friends who I'm like, "Oh, please, your voice, I don't want to hear that." I'm from New York. So, there there are some words that still come out and there's a lot of Brooklyn in me.
Yeah.
So, I was very careful when I was
Yeah.
reading to not sound like I'm from this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, so I agree with you that there's a style of book that it would definitely behoove the author to
Yeah.
not be the reader.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but in my genre, I
I
thought
agree.
it was
Yeah.
best as I guess if you call it the coaching or self-help genre.
Mm-hmm.
I felt
Yeah.
like it was important for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So when you made that decision, or you already knew, like it sounds like it wasn't so much a decision as you knew exactly from the start that you were going to narrate. But how did you set yourself up for success with your? Did you do it in? Did you set up a home studio? Did you get any consultation around that? Tell us about that bit.
Great question. So, in the fitness arena, there's a lot of books. I already said, that lots of books work. There's not one way to get into shape. There's not
Right.
one way to, you can eat for your blood type. You can eat paleo. You can be a vegetarian. They all work, but how they work is usually you got to go from point A to point B all the way down to Z.
Right.
Most of the time in these books, they get 30 pages in, or in fitness, they get 3 or 4 weeks in, they get bored and then they quit.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to get them to the other end.
Right.
So I had a lot of friends who had done books. Some did audiobooks, some didn't. So I only relied on the people who did audiobooks. Then I almost, interviewed them. Because again, I've done this in less than a year. Well, it's a little over a year now. Like I said, it was a year ago that the brainchild came to me, and I had started to interview. Did you do your own book? Did you read your book? Who was your publisher? And I had learned that for me, I needed to self-publish because the process was going to be. I have a lot of friends with some big names in the fitness industry, and they have, been able to go with a giant publishing house.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a challenging process for them
Yeah.
in all aspects.
Right.
And I said, well, this needs to be fun if I'm going to do it.
Uh-huh.
So I don't want to get challenged and butt heads and do all and take 5 years to write a book.
Right. Right.
So I asked around, and as I did, slowly but surely, hey, purchase this microphone. Hey, this is the software that we're going to use. Hey, you know, budget your time, save your voice for a couple of days, don't teach the night before. Like I would get all these tricks
Mhm.
of what was going to be done. And then just finish. A lot of people who self-read said they would like put it on the shelf for a couple weeks. And I was like, how does that sound continuous? Like, you
Not
know what
as
I
good.
mean?
Yes, I do
It's
know
not going to sound
exactly.
as good. Exactly.
Right.
So that's when I knew that here in Arizona, many of the homes, when you purchase them or you build them, you build a casita, a little guest house.
Yeah.
Uh, so I went to the guest house and I went to Home Depot and I got some foam board and I put it over the windows. And I kind of built myself like a little mini closet in the room so that I, didn't have things bouncing off because I knew there was going to be a plane flying overhead or the landscapers were going to come or
Yep.
some car was going to come by honking their horn. And I was like, I don't want to have to redo something I'm on a roll with
Hmm.
because some ambient noise ruined the take, so to speak.
Right.
And I had learned a lot of that in the fitness industry. I'm showing the gray in my beard when I was doing fitness videos and I was doing DVDs and
Yeah.
VHS tapes, and we would have
Right.
to do
Yeah.
take after take because somebody dropped the microphone or, somebody popped a soda can. And it's like, well, hello, we're working here.
Yeah.
So I knew that the sound quality had to be good. So I needed to do it in a contained environment intelligently as quickly as I could. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. No, that's very helpful. And I love how you used your network. I think that in publishing, we talk about this more. I also co-host the Indie Authors Tell All podcast,
Okay.
and we talk a lot there about the value and importance of finding your team and
Oh, yes.
using your network. And it's a really valuable in so many ways that you wouldn't even you wouldn't even like join the community because you're expecting this thing, and then but you get so much benefit from it. So I think that's really great.
I love how you did that because just to get back to the book for a minute, it's one of the chapters is all about finding an accountability partner.
Oh yeah.
Nothing ever works without an accountability party. So I talk about you need a team,
Yeah.
and it's someone who's going to pick up the guitar and learn it with you, or someone who's going to go to that like like the woman who needed to start a new relationship. She needed a wing woman to go to the bar with her or go to the dating apps or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're right, it doesn't really matter what it is, you need a team.
Yeah.
And it took a minute to start. And when I say a minute, like a day, I don't
Yeah.
mean, I got on Amazon, I bought the mic, I tested it out. I did a couple of voice tests back and forth with the person who was going to edit it.
Hmm.
And I will tell you this, and I think your listeners might enjoy this. When I do something, it doesn't matter what it is. As an execution strategist, I set goals.
Hmm.
And I not only want to achieve them, but I want to raise the bar and go one step higher. And I told my sound guy that when he received the files, I wanted this to be the easiest book he's ever edited. And he said, "Boy, that's a stretch." And I said, "Is it a stretch because there are a lot of books that you've done that were easy?" And he said, "No, there's a lot of books that are really hard to edit." He said, "But I don't get a lot of easy books."
Hmm.
And I can tell your listeners, I achieved that goal. He said,
That's great.
"Bobby, you are right. That was the easiest book I've ever edited." Uh, because I said to him, "What do I not do? What do I absolutely do? What are the things that is going to make your life easier?
Hmm. Hmm.
And if I can make your life easier, you're going to enjoy it. And if you're going to enjoy it, even though he's not the voice on it,
Yeah.
somehow it's going to come out on the audiobook." And my listeners who have listened to my book, they're like, "Bobby, that was one of the fastest, best books." My favorite thing is, and you probably have noticed this, I do talk a little fast. And I know a lot of people like to listen to audiobooks on, 1.5 or 2.0 to kind of get through them. And almost everybody to a T who has listened to it said, "I have to listen to your book in real time
Yeah.
because if I speed you up, you talk too fast."
Yeah, I love how, so not only do you use your team and your network, but also the asking the questions and really trying to get clear as so beautiful. So just wanted to
It's
highlight that.
literally,
Yeah.
you asked earlier, like why I wrote the book, who was I writing the book for? It was for the people who don't have answers to the questions.
Yeah.
I and it was, if I could make, if you're going to be on my team, I'm going to be the best teammate I can be.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I don't want it to get into your inbox and something that should have taken you a week or 10 days or however long, it normally takes a sound person to edit a book. I don't want it to take 6 weeks because it's a drain and
Right.
it just sucks the life out of them and they just don't want to do it. I want them to be like, you know what? I'll take another chapter. Let's go.
Yeah.
I'll do one more chapter. This is fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's
so,
great.
it's again, with the coaching that I do and even the story of writing the book and the audiobook, it was, hey, you need a village
Hmm.
and everybody should work together in that village. When
Yeah.
you start working against the grain, something's going to go horribly wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say overall with the recording process, the production process? What would you say felt like, if anything, was like the biggest challenge? What was the hardest part?
Let's see. That's a good question. I would say that, well, I'll tell you this. It is not uncommon for me to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and go to work. But usually when I need a minute to get warmed up, and
Mm-hmm.
by 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock, I've got my teaching voice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I knew I wanted to read it,
Mm-hmm.
and I alluded to the fact that like I'm a start to finish kind of guy. So I read it in one day. The only thing I didn't do is I was not aware of some of the intros and outtakes and things like that were going to be needed.
Mm-hmm.
But I read the chapter and verse cover to back cover in one sitting. And luckily, as an instructor in fitness, in a day before there were microphones, I took voice lessons and I learned how to speak and I learned how to talk from my diaphragm. Again, all things, if you are listening to this and you're wondering like how is this going to go, if you don't know how to breathe and you don't know how to talk, maybe add that person to your team. But I I said I wanted it to be easy for the sound editor. I wanted it to be easy for me. So I spent maybe 10 days prior slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was teaching my classes, as I was working with my clients, as I was doing Zoom calls and coaching people, I intentionally slowed down because I knew I talk fast.
Mm-hmm.
And even in this podcast, I still by nature talk fast,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to have to do retake after retake after retake.
Yeah.
So I did everything. I mentioned, VHS and
Yeah.
DVDs and all that stuff. Early on in my career, I also had a television show, and they would love when it was my turn to be the guest
Yeah.
because they would just call me one take Bobby. They were like, "We're done. We're all going home early because Bobby's here." I like to do things efficiently. I like to execute, get it done, move on.
Yeah.
So I woke up, drank some hot tea, uh, went out to the casita because I had already set it up the day before. Did a couple practice runs, like did the preface and then I just went and I kept on going, kept on going. I made sure I took a break. I tried to take a break every 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
just to give my voice a break.
Yeah.
And I had water and I just kept on going. And I'll tell you, I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but this is one of the most interesting things to maybe your audience who hasn't done an audiobook. I learned, and maybe you teach this because we've just met.
All right.
If I stumbled,
Mm-hmm.
if I flubbed, I would just stop. I would count to five. I would go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I would start the paragraph over, or I would start the sentence over. And that was one of the tips that I got from my sound guy of you tell me, give me something that I can look for.
Yeah.
And for the sound people, they'll look for it as a treble clef, as a treble
A sound
thing
wave.
in a sound
Sound
wave.
wave. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that I'm going to be able to notice, so I can go faster.
Right.
So that was a big deal to me because in the beginning, I fumbled a little bit.
Sure.
And then
That's
as I got back,
perfectly normal. Yeah.
yeah, and as I got to, chapter 9 and 10, the end of my book, I was like, all right, we're cooking with gas now.
Yeah. Okay. So there are several things I want to highlight from what you just talked about for our listeners. So one is you have quite a bit of training and experience that is makes a huge difference.
Yes.
And so I want to highlight that. Also, taking the breaks, so important. So generally, for an author who's going to read their own work, I would not recommend doing it all in one day
Right.
because the voice is going to wear out. So many challenges with that. But because of your experience, just as with a professional narrator who can work for several hours through the day, it's it's there are a lot of components to that. It's the developing of those skills, and then now I don't remember the other points, but just some good things that you mentioned that I wanted to highlight there. So,
The last thing that I'll say, if that it's kind of a piece of advice that was hard,
mm,
is there was one chapter that is a very, very heart-wrenching story. It was about a family that lost a daughter. And it was, my gym, my community, my family, we were very close. And I couldn't get through it.
mm,
Uh, and then, so it was the only one that I kind of had to do a couple of retakes.
mhm.
And then finally on the last one, I was like, you know what? If I lose it a little, I don't care.
Yeah,
If my voice cracks, if they can actually hear that I'm upset,
yeah,
or that my voice is cracking, that's okay.
yeah.
Because for this particular part, that was okay.
It's appropriate. Yeah.
And I needed a minute to give myself permission to do that.
Mm,
So that was very hard, and I was really glad it was towards the end of the book, because I was like, I still got to finish,
yeah.
and I got to finish high.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
uh, I would say that was also probably one of the hardest parts, was
Yeah.
that some of these stories had a lot of emotion to them.
Yeah. And sometimes when authors have a memoir that's maybe it could
Sure.
be about perhaps childhood traumas, that they lived through and came through. Sometimes those can be particularly challenging for an author to record on their own. And there is no shame whatsoever in having a professional narrator
Right.
record your memoir. It's perfectly fine. Um, and then I thought of a couple of those other things that you mentioned that I wanted to
Sure.
highlight. So one is the slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
So it is striking to me how even just the tiniest bit of slowing down when narrating can really make the number of stumbles go way, way down.
Exponentially.
Yes, it's huge. So that's one thing. And then the 5 4 3 2 1 approach is one approach. Another that we often use and professional narrators will use is either like a dog clicker to just make a really sharp click, which makes
Oh,
it
funny.
easier for post-production, or just clapping your hands in front of your mic is another way. So it does create
I
that spike in the waveform.
I love that. I wish I would have known that. I think those are. I would have loved to have like an air horn or something just to drive my sound guy crazy, because we've actually become friends since then. So
Yeah, that's great.
that would have been fun. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, it's just you need something that you don't feel like you have to go back to the beginning of the chapter or the
Yeah.
beginning of the page.
Yeah. And I just feel like I have so many questions for you, but I'm gonna let's talk just for very briefly about distribution.
Okay.
So I understand that you initially distributed through ACX exclusively,
Yes.
and I will be, just like fully transparent. That is the approach that I would put at the bottom of my recommendation list. Like, don't do it that way.
Okay.
But I only state that partly for our audience, but also you expressed that you have made a new choice and have. So tell us about what's happening now with your
Sure.
distribution.
Let me just give a little bit of the timeline.
Hmm.
I wrote the book, and to me, I didn't want to get caught up in the Christmas rush. I didn't want to get lost in the noise of being a book coming around the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized I don't want to get caught up in the New Year's resolution noise. So I waited until February 13th, a very specific day, to launch my book. So my book was in the can, done, published, in my hands, ready to launch. But I waited until a very specific day to launch it because I wanted to kind of be that. Did you start a New Year's resolution and you didn't finish it again?
Mm-hmm.
I can help you because all resolutions are just different versions of next chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a good launch off of that.
Good.
And I mentioned was originally supposed to be a lawyer. So I read all the fine print. And again, I wish I had known you. I would have maybe not taken that choice, but that was the choice that was recommended and was given to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just followed, and I trust the people who did it for me.
Sure.
And knowing that some of their clients don't do audiobooks, some of them never get that far. I knew that was important to me. So I particularly read the audiobook things. And when you work with Amazon, after you initially launch your book, forgive me, I can't remember if it's 30, 60, or 90 days. You can petition them to say, hey, I would like to use my audiobook in different manners. I don't want to only solely sell it on Amazon. And I believe, in my opinion, if I was an author selling 10,000 books a day, they would probably not say yes to this. And in full transparency, I don't have the result of this request, but I can make a request in writing that I would like to be able to continue to sell it on Amazon, but I'd also like to be able to use it in other factors. In my particular thing, when I speak, so let's say I'm going to speak to a conference and they're going to hand out my book to everybody, I want to be able to put up a QR code that says, and if you'd like the audiobook, or if you buy my book now, you can get the audiobook for free. Or if I am teaching a 10-week seminar going over the 10 steps of creating your next chapter, and we're doing it weekly, I want to be able to have them read it or listen or write it or listen to it.
Right. So
that is what I would like to do as I move into the end of the year. If anybody has any questions, you're always welcome to email me or email the show, and then you can find out how it turns out. But I don't have any closure to this yet. But I've been told that 9 times out of 10, unless you're really killing it and selling J.K. Rowling type numbers, you're going to be granted the ability to do so.
Yeah, great. So that seems like the perfect transition into letting our listeners know how they can learn more about you and your book and your work.
Oh, I'm pretty simple. One more story?
Go ahead.
Perfect. As I was introduced by Becky, my name is Bobby Kelly. And for the past number of years, there's been a very famous comedian, works a little blue, kind of like the comedy club scene, named Robert Kelly. So I couldn't buy Bobby Kelly forever because he owned it. But he goes by Robert Kelly. So he just, he had an agent who just bought every version of it. And a couple of years ago, I was able to get the names. So it's Bobby Kelly, BOBBYKELLY.com. And that's the easiest place to find me. It's the easiest place if you need somebody to speak to your group, if you're looking for the book and you can't find it on Amazon for some reason, or you want, if you resonated with my style of coaching and that helps you, that is the best way to do it. BobbyKelly.com.
Great. Thank you. So, Bobby, thank you for being with me today. This has been really great. So, Bobby, again, is the author of The Next Chapter Starts Now. Thanks so much for being with me.
Thanks for having me, Becky.
Stay with us for a sample from another title on Amplify Audiobooks. I'm going to share a sample of Ignite Culture, Empowering and Leading a Healthy, High-Performance Organization from the Inside Out, written and narrated by Margaret Graziano. So here it is. Enjoy.
Corporate culture matters. How management chooses to treat its people impacts everything, for better or worse. Simon Sinek. Except for the woman in the third row clearing her throat, the crowd gathered on that cold January day was completely still and silent. The group's tired, skeptical eyes were fixated on the auditorium's giant stage, where COO Sam Smith stood in the spotlight, looking like a small child wearing an expensive suit. He had been speaking for about 20 minutes, shifting uncomfortably with each revelation. I am sorry, really sorry, for all of it. His head dropped, and he stared at the floor. I've let all of you down, and I apologize for that. His voice cracked. I didn't know what a jerk I was being. I didn't realize how awful I was treating all of you. Smith took a long, deep breath as the tears began to flow. I see it now. I know I was making everyone's life miserable. I see what I did to you, and I promise I will do better. We will all do better. This company will do better by all of you. Things are going to be very different from here on out. The people of C Corp collectively blinked. Was this really their COO on stage? Could this be the same tough, driven, rude, insensitive boss they'd all kowtowed to for so many years? The man on the stage looked like him, but the words coming out of his mouth were completely foreign. Sam's boss was having a different reaction. His fists and jaw were clenched. His whole body was saying, "What the hell is Sam doing in front of C Corp's people? Why is he being so damn weak? This is not a company where grown men cry." A single person at the back of the auditorium tentatively began clapping, then a few more people. In a matter of a few seconds, hundreds of C Corp employees were clapping and rising out of their seats. A muffled "Yay!" could be heard scattered throughout the crowd of 300. Others said, "It's about time!" Such statements grew louder as people patted each other on the back or even hugged. Some were crying. A sense of joy and hope electrified the room. Sam Smith nodded, stroked his hand through his gray hair, and gave a sad smile. "I promise," he whispered with conviction into the microphone. These were the last words he said as he walked off stage. The next Monday at C Corp headquarters, the mood was upbeat and energetic. Sam's speech was the culmination of more than 18 months of work with C Corp's team to fix its culture, and the fruits of that labor were finally paying off. Numerous past and future meetings to fix the company's broken, toxic culture were on the calendar. Sensitivity training for the executive team was well underway. A buzz of conversation about change, growth, and a new way of doing things filled the halls. Instead of being tense and stressed as they had been for years, employees were smiling and showing renewed enthusiasm for their work. A new era was being ushered in at C Corp. Employee life began to change. The next 2 years were creative and productive for the entire company. Sales were up, profits were up, retention was at an all-time high. All the key performance gauges indicated something new and positive was happening at C Corp. The future looked bright. Then, after 2 years of clear validation of the benefits of a healthy culture, an email from CEO Lance Woodruff hit everyone's inbox. Due to unforeseen circumstances, COO Sam Smith will be leaving C Corp effective April 15th. He will be replaced by industry veteran Bert Finch, who brings 30 years of experience to the COO position. Mr. Finch will begin his new role on May 1st. Please give him a warm welcome to C Corp. Within 6 months of Sam Smith's leaving C Corp and new COO Finch reinstating the old way of doing things, morale had sunk to an all-time low. Rumors swirled through the halls of C Corp headquarters about how CEO Woodruff had pushed back when Smith asked him to make important personal changes. Smith had encouraged Woodruff to do some tough self-assessment and examine whether he was really ready to undertake transformative cultural change as the company's leader.
And for a final tag, you can get your copy of Ignite Culture on amplifyaudiobooks.com. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for joining me on Audiobook Connection. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with a fellow book lover or author. Until next time, Keep listening, keep creating, and keep connecting.